Hey everybody, I just decided I'm just going to go read all of chapter 2, and then I'm just going to go through Howard Zinn's chapters 1, 3, 4, 5, and so on until we're done, because there's not that much in chapter 2, and I honestly want to get my thoughts out on this book, so here we go.
50 years before Columbus, the Portuguese took 10 African blacks to Lisbon. This was the start of a regular trade in slaves. African blacks had been stamped as slave labor for 100 years, so it would have been strange if those 20 blacks forcibly transported to Jamestown and sold as objects to settlers anxious for a steadfast source of labor were considered as anything but slaves. Their helplessness made enslavement much easier. The Indians were on their own land, the whites were in their own European culture, the blacks had been torn from their land and culture, forced into a situation where the heritage of language, dress, custom, family relations was bit by bit obliterated, except for the remnants that blacks could hold on to by sheer extraordinary persistence. Was their culture inferior, and so subject to easy destruction? Inferior in military capability, yes, vulnerable to whites with guns and ships, but in no other way, except that cultures that are different are often taken as inferior, especially when such a judgment is practical and profitable, even militarily. While the Westerners could secure forts on the African coast, they were unable to subdue the interior and had to come to terms with its chiefs. The African civilization was as advanced in its own way as that of Europe. In certain ways, it was more admirable, but it also included cruelties, hierarchical privilege, and the readiness to sacrifice human lives for religion or profit. It was a civilization of 100 million people, using iron implements and skilled in farming. It had large urban centers and remarkable achievements in weaving, ceramics, sculpture. European travelers in the 16th century were impressed with the African kingdoms of Timbuktu and Mali, already stable and organized at a time when Europe's European states were just beginning to develop into a modern nation. In 1563, Ramusio, secretary to the rulers in Venice, wrote to the Italian merchants, "Let them go and do business with the king of Timbuktu and Mali, and there is no doubt that they will be well received there with their ships and their goods, and treated well and granted the favors that they ask." A Dutch reporter, around 1602, on the West African kingdom of Benin, said, "The town seemeth to be very great. When you enter it, you go into a great broad street, not paved, which seemeth to be 7 or 8 times broader than the warmost street of Amsterdam. The houses of the houses of this town stand in good order, one's close and even with the other, as the houses of Holland stand. So again, he's just comparing those with other European settlements. And yes, Africa was quite advanced at this time. Interestingly enough,